There's not a day goes by I don't feel regret.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and like I always say, thank you so much to anybody that subscribed or anybody that comments, and the people watching the videos. Really do appreciate the interaction and the support and the friendships that are made. So yeah, all of that is obviously really important to me and to the channel, so thank you for all of that. And today is a book review of a book I've just finished. It's a bit of a special book review because I'm going to be using lots of superlatives. I might run out of superlatives, but ultimately I want to talk about this book ASAP. So there is actually another book review that's been scheduled to go up in the next few days, but I'm going to swap them around a bit. And maybe by the end of this video you'll understand why. It's a book review of Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. And Razorblade Tears is a very complex book. It's a book that I need to talk about. I'm just going to start off by saying that crime novels, by and large, in my experience, are, well, certainly the experience that I've had reading them, they're a bit of escapism, they're a kind of a palate cleanser, they're a light read. I know there are definitely some heavy crime novels, but certainly in my experience, the crime novels I've read have been an exercise in escapism, ultimately. And I think, I'm really looking forward to reading The Big Sleep. I just got that from the library. And those kind of noir novels definitely have that kind of glamour to them and a lightness of touch, but also great characters and a great story, but ultimately a light touch. And I know that there'll be more modern examples of a heavier touch with probably, I don't know, but I imagine the Luther novels are probably quite intense. And just in general, is it Neil Cross? I think Neil Cross wrote the Luther novels, I'm not sure. But I expect there's a whole load of crime novels that are a lot heavier. So I haven't read those, and the crime is a new genre for me, and I've enjoyed some of the stuff I've been reading. I do want to read more crime novels, but ultimately what attracted me to Razorblade Tears was the frequent praise I was hearing, the level of praise I was hearing, and what people were saying about the themes in the book. So it was the themes in the book that drew me to the book. And it's clearly a very modern crime thriller because of the subject matter it tackles and the political themes in the book. But what I wasn't prepared for was the quality of the book. Because, you hear something being praised and you think, oh, that's going to be a good book. I genuinely can't think of another example. There must be another example, but I can't think of another example where I've been so overwhelmed with emotion so many times in the book and taken off on this incredibly deep and powerful journey where I wasn't reading the book anymore, I was experiencing it. Usually when you read a book, you are aware you're reading. Pretty much all of this book, there may have been a few exceptions when you're first getting into it, the first few pages, and it's sort of forming in your head as you're reading it. But pretty much, by and large, the whole book, I didn't feel like I was reading it. It was such an unusual experience. It's such an unusual experience for... And the thing is, this is about reading. This is not just about this book. This is not just about my interaction with the book. This is really touching on why you read. And so often, when you read, you would praise a book and say, oh yes, great prose, Beautiful use of language, lovely characters. I can see what the author's doing there, those kind of things, and it's all very nice and it's all very intellectual and poncy, but it's all up here. And I was actually going to do a separate video about how great writing, I think, is a mixture of two things. So it gets your heart pumping. It's about emotion, but it also gets your head thinking, and it's intelligent as well. So both things have to happen. And I was just going to do a separate general video on that. But the thing is, I just think when you've got a book like this that is written in a way that doesn't let you go, I didn't like the gaps between the readings. So if I had to do something else like since I started this book, I've had a gig, I've been interacting with some other booktubers, I've obviously spent some time with my wife, I've done other things, but it was a real wrench to not carry on reading. You know, if you just solidly reading, I have to have a break now and again with the reading. So just before the end, so literally about 20 pages before the end, I went off and made a cup of tea and cleared my head again, because it's so intense. The ending is so intense. The last 50 pages, the last 50 pages are so intense. But it's so real. This is not forced intensity. It's not contrived. I mean, to a point, obviously, it's well written. The plot works. It's contrived in the sense that it makes sense, but it's so real. It's so real, and it was such a powerful experience reading the book. This is not like a normal review that I've done where, this is the things that are good about the book. These are the things that I would maybe didn't like about the book. This is the plot. This wasn't just reading a book. The book review that this is replacing, so the book review you'll see in a week's time probably, is a really good book. I thought it was a great book. I really liked it. And it did work in both ways, my head and my heart. It definitely did work in both ways. But I'm just speechless. I'm absolutely speechless. I'll tell you about the book. I'll tell you what it is. So, because I've talked for 7 minutes, haven't said what the plot is yet. The book starts with a funeral. So the first few pages, as you go in, there are two old men, it refers to them a lot as old men, that are mourning the loss of their sons, different sons. So one's a black guy who's called Ike, who's lost his son Isaiah, and there's Buddy Lee, who's a white guy, same age, but he's lost his son Derek, and both of them lost their sons because they were murdered. Really brutal murder, and a kind of what appears to be a spiteful, homophobic murder, because they were a couple. And these fathers weren't okay about having gay sons, and they were homophobic themselves, and they had a very strained relationship with their sons, and you see that straight away in the funeral. And as you often get in these kind of stories, once someone dies, you get this regret about what their relationship was like, and I could have done this better, could have done that better. There's lots of regret about the how good or bad they were as fathers, and the whole issue around their lack of acceptance of their lifestyle. And basically, over the course of the first few pages, their grief turns into them wanting the perpetrators of this awful crime to be caught, and they get frustrated that the police aren't doing anything, and basically they figure out that they need to investigate themselves. And what starts off as them saying they need to investigate because the police aren't doing enough, turns into a whole maelstrom of situations where their situation gets worse and worse and worse. I don't want to put any spoilers in it, but the point is, the plot has many jumps in it where it lifts into this other area, and you can sense the tension and the circumstantial chaos that could happen at any moment pretty early on in the book. So I'd say in the first 20-30 pages, there's a sense that they could be going way out of their comfort zone, biting off more than they can chew. And there's that sense all the way through it. And it escalates so dramatically, so realistically. You're taken through this journey through these characters. And Ike, who's one of these fathers, and Buddy Lee, they both have this relationship that is a grudging relationship at first. They realise they need to work together because they both feel the same about their sons, but they have no connection to each other. And through the things that happen to them, that relationship changes. But also they've got their own things going on. So there's a lot of development with Ike's family and his relationship with his wife. And his wife is a fantastic character in it. When she comes into it, again, there's this other energy that's in the novel as well. And Buddy Lee's got his other stuff. He's got stuff going on as well with his ex-wife. And they've both got different ways that they have mistreated their responsibilities as a father. So they've both treated their sons differently and reacted badly in different ways to their lack of acceptance of their gay lifestyle. So that is played through really well. And there's another character in it. I won't say a name, but there's a really big character in it. I don't want to put any spoilers in it. And her character, again, is very well developed. And there's a few shocking twists in the book as well. That's literally made me... it's such a strange experience because I was literally physically reacting to reading the book. And there was a couple of moments where I was losing my breath reading it. And some of these were some of the surprises. So there was a couple of moments where there's one moment when you find out something really important about a character that changes the massive change in the dynamic of the plot and why there's this chaos going on. When that is sort of loaded into the prose, I was I was physically shocked, and I couldn't. I was genuinely short of breath, and then there was another moment later on when you think you've had all the surprises, and then this is towards the end of the book. So this is like in that last bit where the climax has already started to happen, and there's a reveal of something that one of the characters has to say to another character. And when that happened, I couldn't believe it. I stopped reading for a moment to gather my thoughts. I had to readjust what I was thinking about everybody, and it was just such a huge thing, but it made perfect sense. But it was, it was like, I don't know. And then the reaction, you think, well, how is that going to play out with the other character that's affected? And it was just, but every single reaction with every character, with every surprise, every time the plot escalated, every time there was a shift in the role of a character or the level of power that a character had, because there was many moments in the story where a different character were in a different position as far as what they could demand, all those kind of things. Every single time that happened, it made perfect sense, and it was so brilliantly written. So this is partly because the characters were so beautifully drawn, and it's not just because they were so real, because their dialogue was so crisp and sharp, and and realistic. There's also a fair amount, I'd say, scattered through it is these moments of humour as well. And I laughed out loud a few times, or I grinned because someone said something that was so, I don't know, sardonic. It captured a moment where you just think that person is not very optimistic, but they've said this wry kind of comment on their situation that makes it just a beautiful line. Or there'd be some surprise somewhere and someone would say something funny in a reaction to the surprise, those kind of things. And there's a lot of threats of violence. It's a very violent book. There is lots of violence, but even the moments when there's threats of violence, the language is done really well. So it's not cheesy, it's not over the top, it's not... Sometimes you get some dialogue where you give the author the benefit of the doubt because it doesn't quite fit into the persona of the character. And all of the villains, if you like, in this, all of the people that are nasty pieces of work, the dialogue is the threats, the language they use is absolutely perfect. And actually, Ike and Buddy Lee are nasty pieces of work as well. They are not heroic characters. They are definitely anti-heroes. But again, their dialogue is beautifully written, makes perfect sense, and it fits their characters perfectly. And also, there's this sort of sense that when Maya, Ike's wife, speaks, you don't know what she's going to say at the beginning, and then as the character develops, you get a real sense of what she's like. And then there's a bit later on where Ike is a little bit nervous about telling her something, and then when she says what she says in reply, you go, yeah, that makes sense. That is what she would say. It's so powerful, and it's so... These characters tower over the story. And like I started this video by saying that, great writing is about intelligent writing that gets your brain thinking and stirs your thought processes, but also stirs your emotions and makes it real and and has that characterization that makes it all the more resonant. Both things happen, and both things happen in this. And this is just about the story. I haven't got to the themes yet, but the story that you've got here is just beautifully drawn out with these characters, and the way that this crazy situation gets worse and sort of catapults to its conclusion is I just can't imagine it being written any better. There's the last 50 pages. If you do read this, when you get to the last 50 pages, try and read those pages at a moment where you don't have to stop and do something else. Try and give yourself a good couple of hours to read those last 50 pages because you want to read that in one go. Because it's a ride. It's an absolute thrill ride. So that's kind of like the plot. The pacing is ridiculous. The characters, but you can probably tell from what I've said already about the plot that it does look at homophobia in a really good, sincere way. It's done in a way that is sort of buried within the plot, but it touches on every character. So every character has been affected by either being homophobic and regretting it, or being a homophobic and just being a nasty piece of work, or being affected by being a victim of homophobia. And there are characters in the story that have had to hide and not show their true self. And there's obviously Derek and Isaiah, who are the sort of the victims right at the beginning of the book, who were married, and they were victims of brutal crime, and And you don't really know why they were murdered, not fully, until those last 50 pages, and when it then takes off to a crazy degree. So that is explored so well, and it's explored in a way that's... the thing is, it's not just explored in the descriptive prose, but the way that the characters talk to each other about the theme of homophobia and gay lifestyles, and the issue of coming out, all those kind of things. The way that's dealt with in the characters' dialogue and how they talk to each other about it is just incredible. And to be fair, probably the most interesting and powerful words come from Ike and Buddy Lee, who are homophobic. And the way that is played out in the book, there are some lines that are so... the line is aware of the power of the line, if you like. The Cosby would have written those lines knowing that character saying that line is so important. It's just... he's an absolute master of storytelling here. I mean, this is the first book I've read by him, but I am so stunned. I'm genuinely so stunned. I've never thought I'd film a review of a book where I'd be kind of speechless, but also trying to articulate why this is not just reading a book and going, oh yeah, well written story. This is much more than that for me. And I know that people have praised it and said it's a great story and it's well written, great book. But it's so important, and it's so rare to find a book that, well, for me, it's so rare for me to be physically reacting to the reading of a book like this. And so anyway, so the homophobic theme is a big thing. But also class is a huge theme in this as well. So Ike and Buddy Lee have got different levels of financial success in their life, and that is very evident in all the scenes they're in. It comes up in dialogue, but it also comes up in just in the trucks they drive, and their whole sort of attitude to money and wealth and status and where they are, and their relationship to each other. There's a little bit of resentment and a little bit of defensiveness on the part of Ike, who's got more money than Buddy Lee, and the class thing is massively played out in the actual final part of the plot as well. So, class is running through this whole thing as well, which is really good, and the way that is covered again, it's one of those weird things. I don't know if this will make sense, but those two themes are all on every page, but also subtle. So that's very clever. And then the other theme that does get played out a lot is the theme of race as well. So it's no accident that Cosby's written a mixed race couple as the people that were murdered, and a mixed race couple of anti-hero lead characters as well. And that comes up a lot. The N-word is sort of spoken by the nasty pieces of work they have to deal with. It comes up through the book as well. So those are kind of three themes that get explored in the book through the situation and through the characters, through their relationships. And there's enough of these themes put in the book that this is not just a circumstantial kind of exploitative thing. It really does make you think. And I just think anyone who could possibly benefit from more discourse on any of those three themes will definitely benefit from what they would be reading in here, because it's subtle, but it's also really significant what is said in there. So yeah, those themes are really important as well. And I don't think I said yet that it's Cosby's third book. So it came out in 2019, and his second book, Blacktop Wasteland, was really applauded and got loads of awards and all that sort of stuff. So this was big news when it came out, but also it has had lots of attention and praise. But I can't praise it enough. I'm absolutely stunned. I am absolutely stunned. I was so moved by it. The characters are so real. Apparently they've been optioned, this one and the previous book have been optioned for films. So I really hope they cast that well and they really have that subtlety in there, because it is very violent. So you could make a really naff film out of it. But if they get the nuance of the characters right, and they take some of the dialogue from here, the way the plot escalates will clearly be in the film, because that's going to be the big attraction. But if they get the depth of the book in the film, that'd be great, because it's very commercial as well, I think. I mean, that's what I think. Another thing I wanted to say actually when talking about this kind of thing was, I'd been dabbling in my head about I've been wondering in my head about having a video about bouncing off what a few people had put up about what makes a great writer, and some people would see this as popular fiction. It's just a crime thing. It's violent and it's modern times. It's contemporary violent. Revenge thriller, hardly going to be changing the world, is it? And I just think that's such a dismissal of what literature can do and what novels can do and what storytelling can do. This is telling a really significant, important story with fully realised characters, and Cosby clearly is a great storyteller. I feel like I want to say more, but you got to read this, and I don't want to spoil it, because I could, if I did a review with spoilers, which I don't want ever to do really on the channel, but if I did do a review with spoilers, then I could talk about why certain things in the book are such a great decision to have been made by the storyteller. And also I could have read you some lines that are so significant in there as well. But I would recommend this to everybody, literally everybody I know. So, as I said in the early part of the video, I don't read a lot of crime fiction. So, if I was recommending a science fiction thing, it might be because I've read a lot of science fiction and it's sort of more part of my psyche anyway, and it might not necessarily appeal to everybody. I do think this would appeal to anybody, and it is so well written. So, I'm going to shut up about this because I'm just sort of repeating myself a little bit. But, yeah. Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. Wow. Wow. I think when you look at the front and you see two fathers will have their vengeance, it gives off the impression that it's going to be, well, it's going to be violent, right? Which it is. But it gives off the impression that it's going to be quite shallow and quite superficial. It really isn't. Oh my God. I need a rest. After reading those last 50 pages, I need a rest.
Paint me a picture of what it's like to be